The chandelier scattered light like broken promises across the marble floor as Clara Santini stepped into the world of Lucio Varano for the first time. She wore deception like perfume, subtle, deliberate, designed to intoxicate. But the moment his dark eyes found hers across the crowded ballroom, something shifted in the air between them. He stood perfectly still among the chaos of wealth and power, watching her with the patience of a predator who had already chosen his prey. The Italian script tattooed across his knuckles caught the light as he raised his glass. Not in greeting, but in assessment. She had been sent to destroy him. She hadn't expected him to look at her like he already knew. This story contains mature themes of power, obsession, and forbidden love. All characters are consenting adults. If you enjoy stories that blur the line between destruction and devotion, you're in the right place. Please like, share, and subscribe. The Morettas had given her 3 months. 3 months to become indispensable to Lucio Varano. 3 months to find his weaknesses, exploit his trust, and deliver him, broken and vulnerable, into the hands of the family who had raised her from nothing. Clara repeated this to herself as the elevator climbed toward the penthouse level of the Varano Holdings building in Milan. The mission was simple. The target was not. She had studied him for weeks before tonight's charity gala. Every photograph, every rumor, every whispered legend about the man who controlled half of northern Italy's underground empire while maintaining a pristine legitimate business front. Lucio Varano, 38 years old, unmarried, ruthless when crossed, loyal to those who earned it, and completely, devastatingly alone. The elevator doors opened to controlled chaos. Servers rushed past with champagne trays. Security personnel spoke into hidden earpieces. Somewhere, a string quartet began playing something melancholy and Italian. Clara smoothed her burgundy gown, carefully chosen, neither too provocative nor too modest, and stepped into the gilded hallway leading to the main ballroom. Her cover was solid. Clara Benedetti, art consultant from Florence, recently relocated to Milan. The Morettas had spent considerable resources building her identity. Bank accounts, professional references, a carefully curated social media presence showing galleries and exhibitions. She was perfect. She was also terrified. The ballroom opened before her like a fever dream of wealth and power. Crystal chandeliers dripped light onto marble floors. Enormous windows revealed Milan's glittering skyline. Men in tailored suits and women in designer gowns circulated like sharks in an aquarium. Beautiful, predatory, always watching. Clara accepted a champagne flute from a passing server and forced herself to breathe. Find him. Establish contact. Begin the game. She didn't need to search long. Lucio Varano stood near the far windows, surrounded by a small cluster of men who hung on his every word. But he wasn't speaking. He was listening, his dark head inclined slightly, his expression revealing nothing. He was taller than photographs suggested, broader in the shoulders, more commanding in presence. He wore his black suit like armor, every line impeccable, every detail deliberate. But it was his stillness that stopped her breath. In a room full of movement and noise, Lucio Varano existed in perfect, controlled silence, as if the chaos around him was merely weather, and he was the mountain that endured it. Then his eyes lifted, found hers across the crowded room, and everything Clara thought she knew about this mission shattered into dangerous fragments. She had expected cruelty in those dark eyes, expected the cold calculation of a man who had clawed his way to the top of an empire built on blood and secrets, expected to see a monster she could manipulate without guilt. Instead, she found exhaustion. Deep, bone-weary exhaustion hidden beneath layers of perfect control. The kind of tiredness that came not from physical labor, but from carrying weight that never lightened. Clara's champagne glass trembled slightly in her fingers. He's just a man, she reminded herself. A dangerous man. Your target. Nothing more. But he was still watching her. And she couldn't make herself look away. The moment stretched. Lucio's companions continued speaking, but he had stopped listening entirely. His attention had narrowed to a single point, her face, her posture, the way her fingers gripped her champagne flute. He raised his own glass. The tattoo across his knuckles caught the chandelier light. Italian script she couldn't read from this distance, but knew from her research spelled famiglia in elegant black ink. Family. The thing he valued above all else. The thing the Morettas intended to use against him. Clara forced herself to look away first. Took more effort than she expected. His gaze had weight, substance, the kind of attention that pressed against her skin like physical touch. She turned toward a nearby painting, pretending to study the brushwork while her heart raced. This is wrong. The thought surfaced unbidden, unwelcome. He looked at you like he was asking a question, not like a predator, like a man who hasn't been seen in years. She crushed the thought immediately. The Morettas had saved her, raised her, given her purpose when she had nothing. She owed them everything, including Lucio Verano's destruction. 20 minutes later, she felt him approach. Not because she heard him, his footsteps made no sound on the marble floor. But the air changed, grew heavier, charged with something electric and dangerous. You're studying the Caravaggio. His voice was low, cultured, with the barest trace of a Sicilian accent beneath the polished Italian. It slid down her spine like warm honey. Clara didn't turn immediately. She made him wait. 3 seconds. 5. Then she looked over her shoulder with a practiced smile. I'm admiring the technique. The way he uses darkness to illuminate the light. Lucio stepped closer. Not close enough to crowd her. Just close enough to claim the space around her as his own. Most guests admire the price tag, he said. Not the artistry. Clara turned fully to face him, and the impact of his proximity nearly staggered her. Up close, he was overwhelming. Dark hair touched with silver at the temples. A strong jaw shadowed with the ghost of stubble. Eyes so dark they appeared black in certain light, watching her with an intensity that felt like being held underwater. And there, at the open collar of his crisp white shirt, another glimpse of ink. The edge of something larger. A design that disappeared beneath expensive fabric. You're assuming I'm like most guests, Clara said. The words came out steadier than she felt. Thank God for years of training. Something flickered in his expression. Amusement? Interest? You're not, he said. That much is obvious. And how would you know? We've only just met. Lucio's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. We've been meeting for the past 20 minutes, Miss Benedetti. You simply weren't close enough to hear my side of the conversation. Clara's stomach dropped. He knows my cover name. He's been watching me. He's already suspicious. She kept her expression neutral. You have me at a disadvantage, Signor? Verano. He didn't offer his hand. Didn't need to. Lucio Verano. And you're Clara Benedetti, art consultant. Recently relocated from Florence. Impressive client list, though several of your references are proving difficult to verify. The warning was subtle but unmistakable. He's already investigating me. Clara's training screamed at her to retreat, regroup. But something deeper, something reckless, made her hold his gaze. Perhaps your investigators simply haven't asked the right questions. Lucio's dark eyes narrowed slightly. Perhaps, he agreed. Or perhaps you're more interesting than your carefully constructed biography suggests. It wasn't an accusation. Not yet. But Clara heard the suspicion beneath the silk of his words, felt the danger radiating from his perfectly controlled stillness. She should be afraid. Instead, she was intrigued. "Is that why you approached me?" she asked. "To interrogate my references?" "I approached you," Lucio said quietly, "because you're the first person in this room who looked at that painting and saw what Caravaggio actually intended." "And what did he intend?" Clara couldn't help the question, couldn't help the genuine curiosity that crept into her voice despite the warning bells screaming in her mind. Lucio turned slightly, considering the painting. "Salvation through shadow," he said. "The understanding that light only matters when you've known true darkness. That redemption isn't clean or pretty. It's violent and bloody and earned." His voice had changed, grown rougher, more honest. Clara stared at his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders, and felt something dangerous shift in her chest. "He's not supposed to be like this." "That's an unusual interpretation," she managed. Lucio turned back to her, and the mask had returned. Whatever vulnerability she'd glimpsed was locked away again behind walls of control. "I'm an unusual man." His gaze dropped briefly to her lips before returning to her eyes. "As I suspect you're an unusual woman, Miss Benedetti." The attention felt like fire. Clara swallowed against a suddenly dry throat. "You still haven't told me why you're really here," she said. "At this gala, surrounded by people you clearly can't stand." Something dark flickered across Lucio's expression. "Duty," he said simply. "These events serve the family interests. I attend because it's required, not because it brings me pleasure." "Nothing brings you pleasure?" The question emerged before she could stop it. Too personal, too probing, too dangerous. But Lucio didn't seem offended. If anything, his interest sharpened. "Very little," he admitted. This conversation being a notable exception. Clara felt heat climb her cheeks, forced it down ruthlessly. "He's playing you. You're supposed to be playing him." "I should circulate," she said. "Wouldn't want to monopolize the host." She started to turn away. Lucio's hand caught her elbow. Not gripping, not restraining, just touching. His fingers were warm through the thin fabric of her sleeve. "Have dinner with me." It wasn't a question. Clara turned back, eyebrow raised. "That's rather forward, Signor Verano." "I'm rather tired of pretending I don't want things," he replied. "Dinner. Tomorrow. 8 o'clock. My driver will collect you." "You don't know where I live." The corner of his mouth twitched. "I will by morning." Clara should have refused. Should have played harder to get. Stretched out the pursuit. Made him work for every moment of her attention. That was the plan. The careful, calculated strategy the Morettas had designed. But Lucio was watching her with those dark, exhausted eyes, and she felt her training crumbling like sand through her fingers. "One dinner," she heard herself say, "to discuss art." Art. His agreement was too smooth, too knowing. "Of course." He released her elbow, and the absence of his touch felt like loss. "Until tomorrow, Miss Benedetti." Clara watched him walk away. He moved through the crowd like water through stone. Flowing, inevitable, impossible to stop. People parted before him without conscious thought, drawn to his gravity even as they feared it. She pressed her hand against her stomach, willing her heart to slow. One dinner, one conversation, then back to the plan. But even as she thought it, she knew something had fundamentally changed. She had expected to find a monster. Instead, she had found a man who looked at Renaissance paintings and saw redemption through suffering. And that was infinitely more dangerous. The restaurant was private. Of course it was private. Lucio Verano didn't eat in public like ordinary mortals. He had an entire floor of Milan's most exclusive establishment, accessible only by a private elevator, staffed by servers who never made eye contact. Clara stepped out of the elevator at precisely 8 o'clock, wearing a black dress that walked the razor's edge between appropriate and provocative. Lucio was already waiting. He stood near the window, silhouetted against the city lights, a glass of wine in his hand. The tattoo on his forearm was visible beneath the rolled sleeves of his charcoal shirt. More Italian script intertwined with what appeared to be a family crest. "You're punctual." He didn't turn around, just spoke into the glass, watching her reflection in the dark window. "You sound surprised," Clara said. "Were you expecting me to be fashionably late?" "I was expecting you to cancel entirely." Now he turned, and Clara's breath caught at the intensity of his gaze. "Most people don't accept dinner invitations from men like me," he continued. "At least, not the intelligent ones. Perhaps I'm not as intelligent as I appear." "No." Lucio set down his wine and crossed toward her. "You're more intelligent. That's what concerns me." The table was intimate. 2 chairs positioned closer than necessity required. Candlelight that turned everything golden and soft. Wine that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Clara forced herself to eat, though every bite felt like swallowing sand. Across from her, Lucio barely touched his food. He seemed content simply to watch her. "You said you wanted to discuss art," she ventured. "Did I?" His dark eyes glittered in the candlelight. "I don't recall being that specific." "Then what would you like to discuss?" Lucio leaned back in his chair, fingers wrapped around his wine glass. The famiglia tattoo on his knuckles seemed to pulse with meaning. "Tell me about Florence," he said. Clara's rehearsed responses rose automatically. The galleries she'd supposedly curated. The clients she'd allegedly served. The life she'd never actually lived. But something about the way Lucio watched her made the lies feel heavier than usual. "What do you want to know?" "Everything." He said it simply, without demand or pressure. Just genuine curiosity wrapped in endless patience. "What brought you to art? What made you leave Florence? Why you looked at my Caravaggio like you understood something most people miss entirely." Clara's hands trembled slightly beneath the table. "Stick to the script. Give him the cover story. Don't deviate." But when she opened her mouth, different words emerged. "I grew up with nothing," she heard herself say. "No family, no stability, no beauty. Art was an escape, a way to see that the world contained something more than survival. It was too honest, too real, and she couldn't seem to stop." Lucio's expression shifted. The predatory assessment faded, replaced by something softer. Something that looked almost like recognition. "Where did you grow up?" "Naples," she should have said. "The cover story says Naples." "Nowhere worth remembering," she whispered instead. Lucio was silent for a long moment. Then he lifted his wine glass in a gesture that felt almost like a salute. "To nowhere worth remembering," he said quietly, "and everywhere worth escaping." Clara raised her own glass with fingers that wouldn't stop shaking. "What are you doing? He's the target. You're supposed to manipulate him, not bare your soul." But somehow, impossibly, she couldn't stop. The dinner stretched into hours. Wine gave way to coffee. Formality dissolved into something rawer, more dangerous. Lucio spoke sparingly about himself. Careful deflections, elegant redirections. But occasionally, honesty slipped through his defenses. "My father died when I was 23, he said during a lull in conversation. "Left me an empire I never wanted and enemies I couldn't count." "And you've been fighting ever since?" "Surviving." His correction was quiet but firm. "Fighting implies passion. This is simply endurance." "Do you enjoy any of it?" Clara shouldn't have asked. Should have kept the conversation light, seductive, strategically superficial. But Lucio's honesty demanded reciprocation. He considered her question for a long moment, thumb tracing the rim of his wine glass. I enjoy moments, he said finally. Brief gaps in the armor where something genuine slips through. His eyes met hers. Like tonight. Clara's heart stuttered. We've only just met. Yes. He didn't look away. And yet, the words hung between them like a held breath. Clara knew she should break the spell. Laugh it off. Return to safe, strategic territory where she maintained control and he remained the unsuspecting target. Instead, she found herself leaning forward. Why me? She asked softly. A room full of beautiful women, powerful connections, advantageous alliances. Why pursue the unknown art consultant with the unverifiable references? Lucio's smile was barely visible, more shadow than substance. Because you looked at me like I was human, he said. Do you know how rare that is? The car arrived at 11. Lucio walked her to the elevator personally, something Clara suspected he rarely did for anyone. The servers watched with poorly concealed astonishment. Thank you for dinner, Clara said as the elevator doors prepared to open. Thank you for the conversation. Lucio's hand brushed her elbow again. That same light touch from the gala, electric and devastating. Have breakfast with me tomorrow. I thought we were discussing art. We are. His dark eyes gleamed. Over breakfast, and then lunch, and possibly dinner again. Clara forced a laugh that sounded hollow to her own ears. You move quickly, Signor Verano. On the contrary. His voice dropped, intimate and dangerous. I'm moving extremely slowly. If I were moving quickly, you'd already be in my bed. The words hit her like a physical blow. Not because they were crude, they weren't. They were stated simply, factually, like an observation of weather or traffic. You would be in my bed. Clara's thighs tightened involuntarily. That's presumptuous, she managed. That's honest, he corrected. Something I'm beginning to realize you're not entirely accustomed to. The elevator doors opened. Clara stepped inside quickly, needing the distance, needing air that didn't smell like his cologne and danger. Good night, Signor Verano. Lucio. His hand caught the elevator door before it could close. After tonight, I think we've moved past formality. Don't you, Clara? Her name in his mouth sounded like a caress. Good night, Lucio. He released the door, but his eyes never left her face. Until tomorrow, Tesoro. The doors closed on his dark gaze. Clara didn't sleep that night. She lay in her Moretti-funded apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the evening in excruciating detail. I grew up with nothing. Why had she said that? The truth offered to her target like a gift. A weapon handed willingly to the enemy. Because he looked at you like he understood. Her traitorous mind whispered. Because he's not what you expected. She reached for her phone. Considered calling Enzo Moretti. Reporting the progress. Confirming that the plan was working. But her fingers wouldn't cooperate. By morning, she had made a decision. She would continue the mission. Of course she would. She had no choice. The Morettis owned her, body and soul. They had paid for her education, her training, her very survival. Refusing them was not an option. But she would be careful. She would rebuild her walls. Return to strategy. Stop treating Lucio Verano like a person and remember that he was a target. A means to an end. Nothing more. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Breakfast at 9. My driver is already outside. The driver was a mountain of a man named Marco. He said nothing during the 20-minute drive to Lucio's private residence. A converted palazzo on the outskirts of Milan, hidden behind stone walls and security cameras. Clara studied the building as the car approached. It was beautiful. Old stone warmed by morning sunlight, ivy climbing the eastern wall, a courtyard garden visible through iron gates. More museum than home, more fortress than sanctuary. This is where he lives, she thought, where he hides from a world that wants him dead. Lucio met her at the front door. He was dressed casually. Dark trousers, a white linen shirt open at the collar, feet bare on the cool stone floor. The informality was somehow more devastating than his formal elegance. You came. You didn't give me much choice. Clara gestured toward the waiting car. Your driver is rather insistent. Marco has been protecting this family for 30 years. Insistence is his specialty. Lucio stepped aside, gesturing her into the cool interior. Welcome to my home. The palazzo was stunning. High ceilings, original frescoes, furniture that looked centuries old and probably was. Art everywhere. Paintings, sculptures, tapestries, each piece more valuable than the last. But it was also empty, echoingly, achingly empty. No family photographs, no personal touches, no evidence that anyone actually lived here rather than simply existed. It's beautiful, Clara said carefully. It's lonely, Lucio corrected, leading her toward a sunlit breakfast room. But I've grown accustomed to the silence. Breakfast was simple. Fresh fruit, strong coffee, bread still warm from the oven. They ate on a terrace overlooking the courtyard garden, surrounded by blooming roses and the sound of a distant fountain. Clara forced herself to eat normally, to smile appropriately, to remember her mission. But Lucio kept watching her with those dark, knowing eyes, and her defenses felt paper-thin. You slept badly, he observed. I always sleep badly in new cities. Liar. The word held no judgment, just certainty. You slept badly because of me. Clara set down her coffee cup. That's rather arrogant. Is it? Lucio leaned forward, elbows on the table, his forearm tattoo visible beneath the rolled linen sleeve. I slept badly too, for the same reason. The admission hung between them. Clara's heart raced. This wasn't strategy. This wasn't the careful seduction she'd been trained to execute. This was something else entirely. We barely know each other, she said weakly. That's easily remedied. Lucio's voice dropped. If you're willing to stay. She stayed. Through breakfast. Through a tour of the palazzo's art collection. Through lunch served in a private dining room with windows that overlooked the distant Alps. Lucio was a careful host. Attentive without being overwhelming. Present without crowding. He seemed to understand intuitively when she needed space and when she craved conversation. It was terrifying. No one had ever read her so accurately. Not the Morettis. Not her handlers. No one. And yet this man, this dangerous, powerful, morally compromised man, saw her with clarity that felt like violation. By late afternoon, Clara's resolve was crumbling. She sat in the palazzo's library, surrounded by leather-bound books and the smell of old paper, watching Lucio read correspondence at a nearby desk. He worked in silence, completely absorbed, occasionally making notes in elegant Italian script. The concentration on his face was beautiful, intense, private. He doesn't know you're watching, Clara realized. This is who he actually is. Not the powerful Don. Not the controlled predator. Just a man. Reading letters. Alone in his empty palazzo. You're staring. Lucio didn't look up from his correspondence. But the corner of his mouth curved slightly. I'm observing, Clara corrected. It's different. Is it? Now he looked up, setting aside his pen. And what have you observed? That you're not what I expected. That you're sadder than anyone realizes. That destroying you might destroy something in me too. That you work too hard, she said instead. Even on weekends. The Empire doesn't pause for weekends. Lucio rose from his desk and crossed toward her. But I suppose I could be convinced to take a break. He sat beside her on the leather sofa. Not touching. Not quite. But close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. Smell the cedar and smoke of his cologne. Tell me something true, he said quietly. Clara's breath caught. What do you mean? Something real. Something you haven't told anyone else. His dark eyes searched her face. I've shared this house with you. Shared meals. Shared conversation. I think I've earned one true thing. The request was simple. The stakes were enormous. Clara knew she should lie. Offer something plausible but harmless. Something that would maintain her cover while satisfying his curiosity. But when she opened her mouth, a different truth emerged. I'm afraid, she whispered, all the time, every moment of every day, that I'm not good enough, that I'll fail, that everything I've built will collapse and leave me with nothing again. Lucio was silent for a long moment. Then his hand covered hers. His fingers were warm, strong. The Famiglia tattoo pressed against her skin like a brand. Everyone is afraid, he said quietly. The difference is whether you let the fear own you, or whether you own the fear. And which do you do? Both. His thumb traced a slow circle on her wrist. Depending on the day. Clara stared at their joined hands. His large and tanned, hers pale and trembling, and felt something crack open in her chest. This is wrong, she thought desperately. This is so wrong. But she didn't pull away. Couldn't pull away. His touch was an anchor, grounding her to something solid in a world that had always felt like quicksand. I should go, she said without conviction. Should you? Lucio's dark eyes held hers. Or are you simply afraid of what happens if you stay? The question cut too close to truth. Clara rose abruptly, breaking the contact, needing distance before she did something unforgivable. Thank you for today, she managed. For the breakfast and the tour. It was unexpected. Lucio rose too. He didn't try to stop her. Didn't reach for her or crowd her space. Just stood there, watching her with those patient, knowing eyes. Marco will drive you home, he said simply. Clara nodded, already moving toward the door. Clara. She stopped but didn't turn around. Dinner tomorrow, he said. It wasn't a question. There's a gallery opening downtown. Art you might actually appreciate. She should refuse. Should put distance between them. Should remember her mission. What time? She heard herself ask. The gallery opening was legitimate. A rising Italian artist. Abstract expressionism with hints of violence beneath the beauty. Clara moved through the crowd with practiced ease, commenting on brushwork and technique, performing the role of art consultant with effortless precision. But she was always aware of Lucio. He stood at the edge of the room, wine glass in hand, watching her navigate conversations with collectors and critics. The tattoo at his collar caught the gallery lighting. A glimpse of ink that disappeared beneath his suit jacket like a secret. A man approached her near a particularly violent canvas. Stunning work, isn't it? He was handsome in a generic way. Blonde hair, expensive watch, smile too polished to be genuine. I'm Carlo Ricci, and you are far too beautiful to be staring at paintings alone. Clara felt Lucio's attention sharpen from across the room. I'm not alone, she said coolly. I'm working. Carlo's smile widened. Then perhaps you could work for me. I'm building a collection and I find myself in need of expert guidance. His hand touched her elbow. It was brief, a casual gesture that could be dismissed as friendly, but Clara felt Lucio move. Not toward them. Not yet. But his stillness had changed. Sharpened. Become something dangerous lurking beneath the surface of civilized behavior. I'm not taking new clients, Clara said, stepping away from Carlo's touch. But thank you for your interest. Surely you could make an exception. Carlo's voice dropped, intimate and unwelcome. I can be very persuasive. The lady said no. Lucio's voice came from directly behind her. Low, controlled, devastating. Carlo's smile froze. Verano, I didn't realize she was with you. Now you do. Lucio's hand settled at the small of Clara's back. Not possessive, not aggressive, but unmistakably claiming. Walk away, Carlo, while you still can. The threat was elegant, quiet, absolutely genuine. Carlo's face paled. He muttered something about finding another drink and disappeared into the crowd without looking back. Clara turned to face Lucio. I could have handled that. I know. His expression was carefully neutral, but something burned in his dark eyes. I simply chose not to let you. That's not your choice to make. Perhaps not. His hand was still at her back, warm and solid through the fabric of her dress. But it is my nature. I protect what matters to me. Clara's heart stuttered. We've known each other 4 days. Yes. His voice dropped lower. Long enough. The gallery suddenly felt too hot, too crowded, too full of people who might see the way Clara was looking at this dangerous man, this target, this enemy, like he was the only solid thing in a world made of smoke. I need air, she managed. The rooftop. Lucio guided her toward a service door, his hand never leaving her back. Private, quiet, no crowds. Clara should have refused, should have insisted on the main exit, should have maintained professional distance. Instead, she let him lead her into the darkness. The rooftop was beautiful. Milan spread below them like a scattered constellation. Lights twinkling in the darkness, the distant sound of traffic, the warm night air carrying the scent of summer. Clara walked to the edge, gripping the stone balustrade with both hands. Lucio stood behind her, not touching, but close enough that she felt his presence like physical pressure. You're trembling, he observed quietly. I'm cold. Liar. The word was almost affectionate. You're afraid, but not of me. Then what am I afraid of? Clara didn't turn around, couldn't face him, couldn't let him see whatever truth was surely written across her features. Lucio moved closer. His chest nearly brushed her back. His breath stirred the hair at her temple. You're afraid, he said softly, of how much you want this, despite every reason you have to walk away. Clara's fingers tightened on the stone. You don't know me. I know enough. His hand settled on her hip, light, questioning, giving her room to retreat. I know you're hiding something. I know you came into my life with an agenda you haven't revealed. Clara's blood ran cold. He knows. He knows everything. But Lucio continued, his voice maddeningly calm. I also know that whatever brought you here, it's not the whole truth. There's something else. Something you won't admit even to yourself. And what would that be? This. He turned her gently, inevitably, and then his mouth was on hers. The kiss was devastating. Not aggressive. Not demanding. Just consuming. His lips moved against hers with patient intensity, coaxing her open, drawing responses from her body that she couldn't control. Clara's hands found his chest. She should push him away, should stop this, should remember who he was and who she was and why none of this could ever be real. Instead, her fingers curled into his shirt, dragging him closer. Lucio made a low sound against her mouth. Satisfaction and hunger and something almost like relief. Tell me to stop, he murmured against her lips. Clara couldn't speak, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except feel. Tell me to stop, he repeated, pulling back just enough to meet her eyes. And I will. I'll walk away. Pretend this never happened. But you have to say the words. His dark gaze burned into her. Say it, she screamed at herself. Say the words. Save yourself. But her mouth formed different sounds entirely. Don't stop. Lucio kissed her again. Deeper this time. More demanding. His hands slid up her back, pulling her against him until every line of her body pressed against every line of his. Clara felt herself drowning, sinking into sensation, losing the mission, the lies, the carefully constructed walls that had kept her safe for years. This is wrong. The thought surfaced and she drowned it again. Wrong had never felt so right. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucio's forehead rested against hers. Stay tonight, he said. Clara's mind screamed warnings. This wasn't the plan. She was supposed to make him want her, not surrender to wanting him. She was supposed to maintain control, not shatter beneath his hands like glass. But her body answered before her mind could intervene. Yes. One word. Devastating in its simplicity. Lucio's eyes darkened with something triumphant and tender. Marco will bring the car. He didn't release her as they descended from the rooftop. His hand stayed at her back, warm, possessive, marking her as his. The drive to the palazzo passed in loaded silence. Lucio sat close beside her in the back seat, his thigh pressed against hers, his hand wrapped around her fingers. He didn't speak. Didn't need to. The tension between them said everything words couldn't capture. Clara stared at the passing lights and felt herself fragmenting. You're supposed to destroy him, one part of her whispered. Make him trust you. Find his weaknesses. Deliver him to the Moretus. He kisses you like you're the only thing worth saving, another part answered. Maybe you are. The palazzo was dark. Staff had been dismissed. Security was distant. Only the two of them, alone in the echoing stone halls, surrounded by centuries of history and the weight of inevitable surrender. Lucio led her to his bedroom. It was sparse for such a wealthy man. A massive bed, heavy curtains, little decoration. A warrior's quarters, not a collector's. The only personal touch was a photograph on the nightstand. Lucio as a young man, standing beside an older figure who shared his dark eyes. My father, he said quietly, before everything fell apart. Clara touched the photograph gently. You loved him. I worshipped him. Lucio's voice was rough. And then I learned that love doesn't prevent loss. It only makes the loss more devastating. He was standing behind her again, his chest warm against her back, his breath stirring her hair. I haven't brought anyone here, he said softly. Not in years. This room is private. Clara's eyes stung with unexpected tears. Why me? Lucio turned her to face him. His hands framed her face. Large, warm, impossibly gentle for a man capable of such violence. Because you look at me like I'm human, he repeated from their first dinner. Because you argue instead of agreeing. Because when I'm with you, the weight feels lighter. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You can't do this. You're going to break his heart. You're going to break your own. But Lucio was already lowering his mouth to hers, and all Clara's protests dissolved into heat and hunger and heartbreaking surrender. What followed was tender, devastatingly tender. Lucio undressed her slowly, worship in every touch, reverence in every kiss. He mapped her body like she was art he intended to study for a lifetime, pausing at every sigh and shiver. Clara felt herself unraveling. Not just physically, though that surrender was complete, but emotionally. spiritually. Everything she had built, every wall she had constructed, every lie she had told herself about not needing anyone, it all dissolved in his arms. When they finally came together, Clara was weeping, and Lucio kissed every tear like they were precious. Afterward, they lay tangled together in his massive bed. Moonlight filtered through the heavy curtains, painting silver stripes across their intertwined bodies. Clara's head rested on Lucio's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. "You're thinking too loudly," he murmured into her hair. "I'm always thinking." "I know." His hand traced lazy patterns on her bare back. "It's exhausting to watch." Clara almost laughed. Would have laughed if guilt weren't choking her. "What have I done?" "Stay." The word was soft, almost vulnerable. Clara lifted her head to meet his dark eyes. "Stay here," Lucio clarified. "Not just tonight. Stay longer. There's room, privacy, safety." His jaw tightened. "I can protect you from whatever you're running from." The offer sliced through her like a blade. "He thinks I'm running. He doesn't know I was sent." "I'm not," Clara started. "Don't." Lucio's finger pressed gently against her lips. "Don't lie to me. Not now. Not after this." Clara closed her eyes against the tears. "You don't understand. Then help me understand." His voice was raw, desperate, so different from the controlled predator she'd first met. "Whatever trouble you're in, whatever forces brought you to that gala, I can handle them. But I can't help if you won't let me in." Clara's heart shattered. "I was sent to destroy you," she wanted to scream. "The people I owe everything to want you ruined. And I can't. I can't. I need time," she whispered. "Please. Just time." Lucio was silent for a long moment. Then his arms tightened around her. "All right," he said quietly. "Time. But know this, Clara. Whatever secrets you're carrying, whatever lies you think you need to tell, I will find the truth eventually. I always do." The warning was gentle, almost tender, and absolutely terrifying. "Sleep now," he continued, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Tomorrow will come soon enough." Clara closed her eyes and prayed for morning to never arrive. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of stolen mornings and whispered nights. 3 weeks of Lucio's quiet devotion. Fresh flowers appearing in her apartment. Books she'd mentioned delivered to his palazzo. The small attentions of a man who noticed everything and forgot nothing. 3 weeks of Clara falling deeper into something she couldn't name and couldn't escape. The Morettas were growing impatient. Enzo called twice, demanding progress. Clara offered vague assurances. "I'm building trust, earning access, positioning for the final play." But the words tasted like ash in her mouth. "You look troubled." Lucio's voice startled her from dark thoughts. They were in his study, Clara pretending to read while he worked through endless documents. His gaze had lifted from the papers, focused entirely on her face. "I'm fine. You're lying." He set aside his pen and crossed toward her, crouching before her chair so their eyes were level. "You've been lying for days. Something's changed." The concern in his expression nearly undid her. "Tell him," her heart screamed. "Tell him everything. Let him hate you honestly instead of loving you falsely." But the words wouldn't come. How could they? How could she explain that she had been sent by his enemies to seduce and betray him? That every moment of tenderness between them was built on deception? That the woman he thought he was falling for didn't really exist? "Work stress," Clara managed. "Nothing more." Lucio studied her for a long moment. "You're not working," he said quietly. "You haven't taken a client in weeks. Your references have stopped returning calls entirely." His expression hardened slightly. "I think it's time you told me the truth about who you really are." Clara's blood ran cold. I don't know what you mean. Don't insult us both. Lucio rose, putting distance between them. My people have been investigating you for weeks. Clara Benedetti doesn't exist. Not before 18 months ago. No childhood records. No educational history. No family connections. He turned to face her, and the predator was back. You're a ghost, Clara. A beautifully constructed fiction. The question is, who built you? And why? Clara's hands trembled. Lucio, don't. The single word cracked through the air like a whip. Don't speak until you're ready to tell me the truth. I have been patient. I have been gentle. I have opened my home and my heart to you despite every instinct warning me away. His voice dropped, raw with betrayal. Do you have any idea what that cost me? After everything I've survived? To trust someone, anyone, the way I've trusted you. Tears streamed down Clara's face. I can explain. Then explain. Lucio's control shattered. Tell me who sent you. Tell me what you were supposed to do. Tell me if any of it was real. The question hung between them. Clara opened her mouth, closed it. What could she possibly say? Yes, I was sent to destroy you. No, none of it was supposed to be real. But somewhere along the way, everything changed. And now I don't know who I am anymore. The Morettis. The name fell from her lips like a death sentence. Lucio went completely still. Say that again. The Morettis sent me. Clara's voice broke. I was supposed to get close to you, learn your weaknesses, find ways to hurt you. They've been planning your destruction for years, and I was supposed to be the weapon. Silence stretched between them. Terrible, suffocating silence. Then Lucio laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. The laugh was bitter, broken. The sound of a man watching his worst fears confirmed. The Morettis, he repeated. Of course. Who else would be patient enough to construct such an elaborate deception? He turned away from her, hands braced on his desk, shoulders rigid with barely contained rage. How long? What? How long have you been working for them? His voice was ice. How long have you been playing me for a fool? Clara's tears fell faster. Since I was 16, they found me on the streets, gave me food, shelter, training. They raised me, Lucio. They're the only family I've ever known. Family. The word dripped with contempt. They use you like a weapon and you call them family? I didn't have anything else. The words tore from her throat. No parents. No home. No future. They gave me purpose. They gave me skills. They gave me a reason to survive. And in return, they sent you to seduce me, to betray me, to deliver me into their hands. Yes. Clara's voice dropped to a whisper. Yes, that was the plan. Was? The single word carried dangerous weight. I couldn't. Clara rose, desperate to make him understand. I was supposed to manipulate you, but you weren't what I expected. You were kind and sad and lonely, and you looked at me like I mattered. She took a step toward him. I couldn't destroy you, Lucio. I tried. I told myself I would. But every time I got close, I just couldn't. Lucio turned to face her. His expression was unreadable. Rage and pain and something else. Something she couldn't identify, warring behind his dark eyes. So what now? His voice was deadly quiet. You confess your sins and expect absolution? You tell me you couldn't complete the mission and I'm supposed to forgive the attempt. I don't expect anything. Clara's voice broke. I know what I've done. I know there's no redemption for it. But I couldn't keep lying to you. Not after. She gestured helplessly at the room, at the desk where they'd shared coffee, at the chair where she'd watched him work, at the space between them that had somehow become sacred. Not after what? Not after I fell in love with you. The confession hung in the air like smoke. Lucio's jaw tightened. Love, he repeated flatly. You lie to me for weeks. Spy on me for my enemies. Plan my destruction. And now you claim to love me. I'm not claiming anything. Clara wrapped her arms around herself. I'm just telling you the truth. Finally. For the first time since we met. Get out. The words hit her like physical blows. Lucio, get out of my house. His voice was ice. Absolute. Unforgiving. You wanted the truth? Here it is. I trusted you. Against every instinct. Against every lesson life has taught me. And you repaid that trust with betrayal. He pointed toward the door. Go back to your Moretti masters. Tell them whatever you want. But don't ever come back here. Don't call. Don't write. As far as I'm concerned, you're dead. Clara stood frozen. This was what she deserved. She knew that. Had known it from the moment she'd let herself feel something real for him. But deserving the pain didn't make it hurt less. I'm sorry, she whispered. So am I. Lucio's voice cracked on the words. More than you'll ever understand. He turned his back on her. Clara walked out of the study on legs that barely supported her. Through the palazzo's echoing halls. Past Marco, whose expression flickered with something like sympathy before hardening into professional neutrality. The gates closed behind her with terrible finality. Clara stood on the empty street, staring at the stone walls that had become her sanctuary, and felt her heart shatter into fragments too small to ever reassemble. You did this, she told herself. You knew the cost and you paid it anyway. But she hadn't known, hadn't understood that loving him would hurt this much. That losing him would feel like losing pieces of herself she hadn't even known existed. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Enzo Moretti. Report in. Now, the Moretti compound was cold. Clara had never noticed before. The sterile efficiency of the marble floors, the calculated grandeur of the chandeliers, the absence of warmth beneath the wealth. But after weeks in Lucio's palazzo, surrounded by art that told stories and furniture that remembered history, this place felt like a tomb. Enzo Moretti waited in his study. He was a handsome man in his 50s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the patient cruelty of a cat playing with wounded prey. Sit, he said. Clara sat. You've been quiet, Enzo observed, circling his desk like a shark. My sources tell me you've been spending considerable time at the Verano Palazzo, building trust, establishing intimacy. His smile was a blade. And yet you've delivered nothing useful. No business intelligence. No security vulnerabilities. No exploitable weaknesses. Clara's hands clenched in her lap. I've been working. You've been sleeping with him. Enzo's voice hardened. Don't insult my intelligence, Clara. I've had people watching. I know exactly what you've been doing. Then you know it's working. Clara forced steel into her voice. He trusts me. Completely. I have access to his home, his private quarters, his inner circle. Another few weeks and I'll have everything you need. Enzo studied her for a long moment. Will you? The question carried dangerous weight. Yes. I wonder. He settled into his chair, steepling his fingers. You see, I've been receiving troubling reports, suggestions that your loyalties may have shifted. Clara's blood ran cold. That's ridiculous. Is it? Enzo's eyes narrowed. You refused my last 2 calls. You've been avoiding the compound. And my watchers report that you look at Verano with something that resembles genuine affection. He leaned forward. You forget, Clara, that I made you. I know every expression on your face, every tone in your voice, every trick you've ever learned to deceive. His smile vanished. And I know when someone is lying to me. Clara's heart raced. "I've given you everything," she said carefully. "My childhood, my training, my entire adult life. Why would I betray that for a man I've known weeks?" "Because you're weak." Enzo's voice dripped contempt. "Because you've always been weak. I saw it when I plucked you from those streets. A pathetic, desperate child willing to do anything for scraps." He rose, circling toward her. "I thought I'd trained that weakness out of you. Apparently, I was mistaken." Clara forced herself not to flinch. "I've done everything you asked. The cover, the approach, the seduction. The plan is working. The plan is failing." Enzo gripped her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. "And if it fails completely, so do you. Do you understand what that means?" Clara understood. The Morettas didn't tolerate failure. Those who disappointed them disappeared. Quietly, completely, as if they had never existed. "Give me more time," she whispered. "You have 1 week." Enzo released her roughly. "Deliver Verano's weaknesses or face the consequences." Clara returned to her apartment in a daze. The walls that had once felt safe now seemed like a cage. Moretti funded. Moretti monitored. Moretti controlled. "There's nowhere to run," she realized. "Nowhere they won't find me." She thought of Lucio's face when she'd confessed. The betrayal in his dark eyes. The way his voice had cracked when he'd told her to leave. "He hates you now. He'll never forgive you." But somehow, impossibly, that hurt less than the thought of actually completing her mission. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. A single message. "We need to talk. Midnight. The gallery where we first kissed. L." Clara stared at the screen, certain she was hallucinating. He wanted to see her? After everything she'd revealed? Could be a trap. Probably was a trap. Lucio had every reason to want revenge, and she had no way of knowing what he intended. But she would go anyway, because even if he planned to kill her, at least she would see him one more time. The gallery was closed, but the rooftop access door was unlocked, just as it had been the night he'd first kissed her. Clara climbed the stairs with her heart in her throat, every step carrying her closer to whatever waited above. Lucio stood at the balustrade, silhouetted against the city lights. He didn't turn when she emerged, just spoke into the darkness. "You came. You knew I would." "Yes." His voice was rough. "Despite every reason you have to stay away." Clara approached slowly. "I didn't think you wanted to see me again." "I don't." Lucio turned, and her breath caught at the devastation written across his features. Dark circles beneath his eyes, lines of tension around his mouth, the look of a man who hadn't slept in days. "I don't want to see you," he repeated, "but I can't stop thinking about you. Can't stop remembering. Can't stop." His voice broke. "Wanting you, even knowing what you are." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I never wanted to hurt you, and yet you did." Lucio crossed toward her with predatory grace. "You infiltrated my life, seduced me, made me believe." He stopped inches away, close enough to touch but carefully not touching. "Made me believe I could trust someone again, that I could have something real. And it was all a lie. Not all of it." Clara's voice trembled. "The things I feel, for you, those are real. I couldn't fake that, Lucio. Not with you. How am I supposed to believe that?" The question was raw, desperate. "How am I supposed to trust anything you say when every word you've spoken has been calculated to manipulate me?" Clara reached for him, slowly, carefully, giving him room to retreat. He didn't move. Her hand pressed against his chest, feeling his heart hammer beneath her palm. "Because I'm telling you the truth now," she whispered. "Even though it costs me everything. Even though the Morettas will kill me for failing. I'm choosing honesty over survival." They'll kill you. Lucio's expression shifted. The rage was still there, but something else surfaced beneath it. Concern, perhaps. Protective instinct. If I don't deliver you to them within a week. Clara's voice steadied. They don't tolerate failure. I knew that when I walked into your study and confessed. Then why confess at all? Why not complete the mission? Save yourself. Because I couldn't destroy you. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Because somewhere along the way, saving myself stopped mattering as much as protecting you. Lucio stared at her with something breaking behind his dark eyes. You chose death, he said slowly. To save me? Yes. The word hung between them like a held breath. And then Lucio's control shattered entirely. His hands gripped her face, pulling her toward him, and his mouth crashed against hers with all the desperate fury of a man who just discovered that the only person he'd ever truly wanted was about to be destroyed by the very enemies he'd sworn to annihilate. The kiss was violent. Not in cruelty, never that, but in desperation. Lucio kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning for years. His hands gripped her face, tilting her head back, claiming her mouth with a ferocity that stole her breath. Clara gasped against his lips. Her fingers curled into his shirt, dragging him closer, needing more contact, more heat, more of whatever this devastating collision was becoming. I hate you, Lucio growled against her mouth. I hate what you've done to me. I know. I can't stop wanting you. I know that too. He pulled back just far enough to meet her eyes. The city lights painted shadows across his face, highlighting the sharp angles of his jaw, the dark intensity of his gaze. The tattoo at his collar seemed to pulse with his rapid heartbeat. Italian script she now knew read La famiglia è tutto. Family is everything. If I save you, he said roughly, it won't be because I've forgiven you. It will be because I can't watch you die. Do you understand the difference? Clara nodded, tears streaming. Yes. Good. His thumb traced her cheekbone, wiping away moisture. Because forgiveness may never come. Then why? Because you matter. The words seemed torn from somewhere deep inside him. Despite everything, despite the lies, despite the betrayal, you looked at me like I was human, and apparently that was enough to ruin me completely. His forehead pressed against hers. I'm going to destroy the Morettus, not for revenge, not for business, for you. Because they threaten something that belongs to me. Clara's breath caught. I don't belong to anyone. You belong to me. Lucio's voice dropped to a whisper. You have since the moment you looked at my Caravaggio and saw redemption through suffering. They left the rooftop before dawn. Lucio's car waited in the alley below. Not the usual town car, but something armored and anonymous. Marco stood beside it, expression carefully neutral despite the surprise in his eyes. The palazzo, Lucio instructed, guiding Clara into the back seat. And Marco, no one knows she's returned. No one. Understood, boss. The car pulled into sleeping streets, and Clara felt reality settle around her like a shroud. She was returning to the place she'd been banished from, with the man she'd betrayed, into a war she'd helped start. You're thinking again. Lucio's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. His hand covered hers in the darkness, warm and solid. About what happens next, Clara admitted. The Morettus have resources, connections. They've been planning your destruction for years. And they sent you as their weapon. Lucio's thumb traced circles on her wrist. A miscalculation on their part. How so? His dark eyes gleamed in the passing streetlights. Because now their weapon belongs to me. The palazzo was silent. No staff. No security visible in the halls. Just empty rooms and echoing corridors. as if the building itself was holding its breath. Lucio led her not to his bedroom, but to a wing she'd never seen, a secure suite deep within the palazzo's ancient walls. "You'll stay here," he said, opening a heavy door. "Private entrance, secure communications, everything you need." Clara stepped inside. The room was elegant but spare. A bed, a desk, windows that overlooked an interior courtyard. Safe, hidden, a cage wrapped in luxury. "I'm not a prisoner." She said it quietly, but the words carried weight. Lucio paused in the doorway. "No, your protection." His expression was unreadable. "The Morettas will be looking for you when you fail to report. Here you're invisible, untraceable, safe. And what about you?" Clara turned to face him. "You're planning war against a family that's been building power for generations. What's your protection?" Something dark flickered across Lucio's face. "I've been preparing for this war my entire life. The Morettas just didn't know they'd already lost." He left her alone. Clara stood in the center of her gilded prison, listening to his footsteps fade, and tried to understand what had just happened. He'd taken her back. Not forgiven her, he'd been clear about that, but taken her back nonetheless. Offered protection she hadn't earned. Declared war against enemies who wanted her dead. Why? The question circled her thoughts like a vulture. Was it strategy? Revenge? The simple refusal to let anyone else claim what he considered his? Or was it something more dangerous? Something that looked terrifyingly like love? Morning brought answers. Clara woke to find breakfast waiting outside her door. Fresh fruit, strong coffee, warm bread, and a note in elegant handwriting. "My study. 10 o'clock. We have planning to do. L." She ate mechanically, showered, dressed in clothes that had somehow appeared in the wardrobe overnight. Practical items. Dark colors. The uniform of someone preparing for battle rather than seduction. At precisely 10, she knocked on Lucio's study door. "Enter." He wasn't alone. 3 men stood around a large table covered in maps and documents. They turned as Clara entered. Faces she recognized from her research. Lucio's inner circle. His most trusted advisors. And every one of them was looking at her with barely concealed hostility. "Gentlemen." Lucio rose from behind his desk. "You know who this is. We know what she is." The speaker was a silver-haired man with cold eyes. A Moretti spy, an infiltrator, a threat. She was those things. Lucio's voice carried steel. "Now she's an asset. With respect, boss." "I'm not asking for opinions, Dante." Lucio's interruption was sharp. "I'm explaining the situation. Clara has intimate knowledge of Moretti operations, their resources, their contacts, their planning. Information we need." He moved to stand beside her. "She's also under my protection. Anyone who threatens her threatens me." The silence that followed was thick with tension. Clara felt the men's gazes like physical weight. Suspicious, hostile, measuring. They didn't trust her. Would probably never trust her. But they trusted Lucio. For now, that would have to be enough. The planning session lasted hours. Clara shared everything she knew: Moretti safe houses, financial networks, key personnel, information she'd gathered over years of servitude, never imagining she would use it against the family who'd raised her. The men listened with grudging attention. By afternoon, the hostility had faded slightly. Not into acceptance, that would take time if it came at all, but into reluctant professionalism. They were soldiers. She was providing intelligence. The mission mattered more than personal feelings. "The main compound is here." Clara pointed to a map location. "But Enzo rarely stays there anymore." "Where does he stay?" Lucio's question came from directly behind her. She could feel his heat at her back, his presence overwhelming despite the careful distance he maintained. He rotates between properties. Never the same location twice in a row. Clara traced possible routes on the map. He's paranoid. Always has been. With good reason. Lucio's voice was cold. He's made enemies of everyone who might have protected him. Including you? Including me. His hand brushed her shoulder, brief, almost accidental. Though he doesn't know yet that I've chosen my side. By evening, a plan had taken shape. Not a battle plan. Lucio was too strategic for direct confrontation. Instead, they would dismantle the Moretti Empire piece by piece. Financial pressure. Strategic defections. The slow strangulation of a family that had survived for generations. It will take months, Dante warned. I have patience. Lucio's gaze found Clara across the table. And motivation. The meeting ended. The men filed out with murmured farewells, leaving Clara alone with the man who'd somehow become both her captor and her salvation. You did well. Lucio's praise was unexpected. Clara turned to find him watching her with an expression she couldn't read. I betrayed people who raised me. That's not something to praise. You chose correctly. He crossed toward her, movements deliberate. Between people who used you and people who... He stopped, corrected himself. Between users and something else. That takes courage. Clara's throat tightened. I don't feel courageous. I feel like a traitor. You are a traitor. Lucio's honesty was brutal. To them. But perhaps loyalty to the wrong cause isn't loyalty at all. And what's the right cause? The question emerged before Clara could stop it. Lucio was standing close now. Close enough that she could smell his cologne. See the subtle patterns in his dark eyes. Count the individual hairs of stubble shadowing his jaw. I'm still deciding, he said quietly, whether the right cause is revenge, justice, or something more personal. His knuckles brushed her cheek, the famiglia tattoo warm against her skin. You complicate things, Clara. You make me want outcomes I shouldn't want. What outcomes? Clara's voice was barely a whisper. Lucio's expression shifted. The control that usually armored him seemed to crack, revealing something raw beneath. Outcomes where you survive this. Where we both survive this. His thumb traced her lower lip. Outcomes where I stop caring about what you've done and start caring only about what you might become. Clara's heart raced. Is that possible? After everything? I don't know. His forehead pressed against hers. But I find myself wanting to find out. He didn't kiss her. The restraint was almost worse than action. He held himself perfectly still, his breath mingling with hers, his body radiating heat and tension and carefully controlled desire. Clara understood what he was offering. Time, space, the chance to rebuild something from the wreckage of her betrayal. Not forgiveness, he'd been clear about that, but possibility. I'll earn it, she whispered. Your trust. Whatever it takes. I know. Lucio pulled back, putting distance between them. That's why I'm giving you the chance. Days passed. Clara fell into a rhythm within the palazzo's walls. Planning sessions each morning. Intelligence review each afternoon. Meals taken alone in her suite or, occasionally, with Lucio in his private dining room. The dinners were careful. Conversations stayed professional. Topics remained tactical. But beneath the surface, something else was building. A current of awareness that neither acknowledged but both felt. Clara caught Lucio watching her during meetings. Caught herself watching him in return. The tension was suffocating. Exquisite. Impossible to escape. 2 weeks after her return, the first Moretti asset fell. A shipping company in Naples. One of Enzo's key financial channels. Lucio's people acquired it through a series of shell corporations, cutting off revenue that had flowed to the Morettas for decades. They'll know it was you, Clara warned. I'm counting on it. Lucio's smile was predatory. Let them realize what they've started. Let them understand that the weapon they created has turned against them. His gaze found hers across the strategy table. And let them know that she's mine now. The declaration sent heat through Clara's veins. Mine. Not a claim of ownership exactly. Something more complicated. More possessive. More terrifying in its implications. She was still processing the word when Lucio appeared at her suite that evening. Walk with me. It wasn't a request. Clara followed him through the palazzo's corridors, past Renaissance paintings and ancient tapestries, until they emerged into the courtyard garden. Moonlight turned the roses silver. The fountain's gentle music filled the silence between them. You've been avoiding me. Lucio's observation held no accusation, just statement of fact. I've been respecting boundaries. Clara wrapped her arms around herself against the night chill. You made it clear that forgiveness isn't guaranteed. I did. He moved closer, his footsteps silent on the stone path. I also made it clear that I can't stop wanting you. Wanting isn't the same as trusting. No. His hand caught her elbow, turning her to face him. But perhaps they don't need to be. Perhaps wanting is enough for now. The tattoo on his forearm caught the moonlight, the family crest intertwined with Italian script. Honor. Famiglia. Sang. Honor. Family. Blood. The values he'd been raised to protect. The legacy he carried like chains. Your tattoos, Clara said softly. What do they mean to you? Lucio's expression flickered with surprise at the question. They're reminders of who I am, what I owe, what I've sacrificed to hold my family together. And now you're sacrificing more. For me. Yes. His voice was raw. Though I'm beginning to think it might be worth it. Clara's breath caught. Why? Because you're the first person in years who's looked at me and seen something other than the dawn. Lucio's free hand rose to cup her face. You saw the man underneath. The exhaustion. The loneliness. The desperate need for someone who wanted me, not my power. I was supposed to manipulate that. Yes. His thumb traced her cheekbone. And instead you fell into the same trap I did. You started caring. Started wanting something real. Clara's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. For all of it. I know. 2 words. Simple. Weighted with meaning. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But acknowledgement. Understanding, perhaps, of the impossible position she'd been placed in. Lucio leaned forward. His lips brushed her forehead, gentle, almost reverent. We'll find our way through this, he murmured against her skin. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I know I'm not willing to lose you to discover the alternative. Clara's hands found his chest, pressing against the steady rhythm of his heart. I'm not going anywhere. The next morning brought news. Marco interrupted the planning session with an urgent message. Enzo Moretti had made a move. A key Verano ally, a shipping magnate named Alessandro, had been approached with threats against his family. Testing boundaries, he said grimly. Seeing how far he can push before you respond. Lucio's expression hardened into something dangerous. Then we respond. Immediately. Decisively. His dark eyes found Clara across the table. And we make sure Enzo understands exactly what happens to anyone who threatens what's mine. The response was surgical. Within 48 hours, 3 Moretti businesses had been seized. 2 key lieutenants had been persuaded to switch allegiances. A network of informants that had taken Enzo decades to build was systematically dismantled. Clara watched it unfold with horrified fascination. This was Lucio's true power, not violence, but strategy. The patient destruction of enemies who never saw the killing blow coming. "He's panicking," she told Lucio during a late-night review session. "I know Enzo. This level of pressure will make him desperate." "Good." Lucio's voice was desperate men make mistakes. Desperate men also become dangerous. Clara's warning hung in the air. "He'll come for you directly soon. He can't afford to keep losing resources. Let him come." Lucio rose from his desk and crossed toward her. "I've been waiting for this confrontation since before you entered my life. The Morettas have been thorns in my family's side for generations." His hand tilted her chin up. "But now I have motivation beyond family legacy. Now I have something personal to protect." The possession in his gaze made Clara's knees weak. "You should hate me." The words escaped before she could stop them. "Probably." Lucio's agreement was disarming. "And part of me does. The part that trusted you. The part that believed briefly that something genuine had walked into my life. And the other part? The other part." His voice dropped. "The other part understands that you were a weapon forged against your will. That the girl who grew up with nothing had no real choice when the Morettas offered her everything." His thumb traced her lower lip. "That part wants to give you the choice you never had." "What choice?" "Stay or go." Lucio released her, stepping back. "When this is over, when the Morettas are destroyed, you'll be free. No obligations. No debts. No chains." Clara's heart clenched. "And you?" "I'll survive." His smile was bitter. "I always do." "That's not what I asked." Silence stretched between them. "No," Lucio said finally. "It wasn't." He turned away, dismissing her without words, leaving Clara alone with the devastating realization that she didn't want freedom. She wanted him. Part 8. The confrontation. The attack came 3 weeks later. Clara woke to darkness and the sound of gunfire, distant but unmistakable, echoing through the palazzo's ancient walls. She was on her feet before conscious thought, reaching for the weapon Lucio had insisted she keep beside her bed. The door burst open. "Not enemies." Marco, his face grim. "The boss needs you. Now." Clara didn't hesitate. The palazzo's security center was controlled chaos. Screens displayed feeds from dozens of cameras. Armed men spoke into radios with urgent efficiency. And at the center of it all stood Lucio, perfectly controlled despite the crisis erupting around him. The tattoo at his collar seemed darker in the harsh lighting. War paint for a modern battlefield. "They've breached the eastern wall," someone reported. 20 men. Professional. "Moretti's best," Clara heard herself say. "His personal guard. He only deploys them for priority targets." Lucio's dark eyes found hers. "Can you identify them?" "Yes." Clara moved toward the screens, scanning the grainy footage. That's Vito, Enzo's head of security. And those two are." She stopped, froze. "Clara? They're coming for me." The realization was ice in her veins. "Specifically me. Enzo isn't trying to hurt you. He's trying to retrieve his weapon." Lucio's expression went terrifyingly still. "He thinks you're salvageable. That he can take you back and force you to complete the mission." "Yes." Clara's voice shook. "And he won't care how many people die in the process. Then we give him what he wants." Lucio's words hit like a physical blow. "What?" "Not actually." His hand caught her arm, pulling her away from the screens. "But if Enzo wants you badly enough to breach my walls, we use that. Draw him out. Make him vulnerable. Use me as bait." "Yes." No apology in his tone. No gentleness. Just the cold calculation of a man protecting his territory. You wanted to earn my trust. This is how. Clara stared at him, understanding dawning. This was the test. The price of her redemption. What do you need me to do? Lucio's expression flickered, something like respect warming his dark eyes. Be visible. Let them see you through the windows. Make them think you're trying to escape, to return to Enzo willingly. And then my people will be waiting. His grip on her arm tightened. You won't be in real danger. I won't allow it. But Enzo's men won't know that until it's too late. Clara's heart pounded. You trust me enough for this? No. Lucio's honesty was brutal. But I trust your survival instincts. And your desire to see Enzo destroyed. The plan unfolded with military precision. Clara appeared at a window overlooking the eastern garden. Terrified, apparently desperate, playing the role of a woman trying to escape her captors. The Moretti soldiers saw her immediately. She watched their formation shift, attention redirecting toward her position. Vito gave hand signals, splitting his force to approach from multiple angles. Come on, Clara thought. Take the bait. Below her, invisible in the shadows, Lucio's men waited. And behind her, silent as death, Lucio himself watched through the darkness. The trap snapped shut. Moretti soldiers poured into the garden, expecting a vulnerable target. Instead, they found themselves surrounded, outgunned, outmaneuvered, caught in a kill box of Lucio's design. Clara watched from the window as the battle ended before it truly began. Vito was taken alive. The others surrendered or died. Within 10 minutes, the eastern garden was silent except for the sound of men being restrained. It's done. Lucio's voice came from directly behind her. Clara turned, heart still racing, and found him watching her with something new in his expression. You didn't run. His observation was quiet. Waited. Where would I go? Clara managed. The Morettis want me dead or recaptured. Everyone else sees me as your enemy's tool. There's nowhere in the world that's safer than beside you. Safety wasn't what I was asking about. Clara understood. I didn't run because I didn't want to. She met his dark eyes directly. Because somewhere in the past weeks, this stopped being about survival and started being about something else. What? You. The word was barely a whisper. Just you. Lucio moved. One moment he was across the room. The next, his hands were in her hair, his mouth on hers, the kiss devastating in its intensity. Clara gasped against his lips. This was different from before. Raw. More desperate. The kiss of a man who just watched her risk herself for his cause and couldn't contain his response. You could have died, he growled. But I didn't. You could have run. But I didn't. Clara pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I'm choosing this, Lucio. Choosing you. Despite everything. I haven't forgiven you. The words should have hurt. Would have hurt weeks ago. Now Clara just nodded. I know. But you will. Eventually. Because I'm going to prove, every single day, that I'm worthy of it. Something cracked in Lucio's expression. You're infuriating. I know. And stubborn. Also true. And I am absolutely, devastatingly in love with you. Clara's heart stopped. What? You heard me. Lucio's voice was rough. I tried not to be. Told myself it was obsession or possession, or simply male pride refusing to admit defeat. But it's none of those things. His hands framed her face. It's love. The terrifying, life-destroying, makes no logical sense kind of love. And I don't know what to do with it. Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. Lucio, don't. His thumb caught a tear. Don't say it back unless you mean it. Unless you're certain. Because I can't survive you breaking me twice. Clara reached up, covering his hands with hers. I love you. The words came out stronger than she expected. Clearer. I loved you before I knew what love was. Before I understood that it could be real rather than performed. Her voice broke. I loved you when I was supposed to destroy you. That's why I couldn't do it. That's why I confessed. Because loving you and hurting you were mutually exclusive, and my heart chose before my mind caught up. Lucio made a sound, half laugh, half sob. We're both disasters. Yes. Clara smiled through her tears. Perfect disasters. He kissed her again. Softer this time. Tender. The kiss of a man who'd finally stopped fighting an inevitable truth. When they broke apart, forehead to forehead, breathing the same air, Clara felt something settle in her chest. Peace. Certainty. The sensation of coming home to a place she'd never known she was searching for. The Morettas aren't finished, she murmured. No. Lucio's voice was steady. But they will be. Soon. And then, his smile was almost gentle. And then we find out what peace looks like. Together. Part 9. The Reckoning. Veto broke within hours. Lucio's interrogation methods were surgical, no violence, just pressure applied to precisely the right points. By morning, they had everything. Enzo's current location, his security rotation, his escape routes. He's at the lake house, Clara confirmed, studying the intelligence. It's his safest property. The one he retreats to when things get dangerous. Then that's where we go. Lucio's voice carried finality. Tonight. Let me come with you. The request emerged before she could stop it. Lucio's expression hardened. Absolutely not. I know that house, Clara pressed. I know its secrets, its weak points, and if you're seen, Enzo will know exactly what happened. He'll understand that you betrayed him completely. He already knows. Clara's voice was steady. He knew the moment I failed to report in. Let me face him. Let me end this properly. Lucio studied her for a long moment. You want closure. I want him to understand what he created. Clara's hands clenched. He raised me to be a weapon, but he never considered that weapons can choose their targets. Lucio was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded, short, sharp, decisive. You stay beside me. You follow every order without hesitation. If I tell you to run, you run. Lucio, those are the conditions. His voice allowed no argument. Accept them or stay behind. Clara's jaw tightened, but she nodded. Accepted. Something flickered in Lucio's expression. Approval, perhaps, or concern. Then prepare yourself. We leave at midnight. The lake house was beautiful. Even in darkness, Clara could appreciate its careful architecture. Modern glass and ancient stone blended seamlessly, overlooking black water that reflected starlight like scattered diamonds. She'd been here 3 times before, always as Enzo's soldier, always carrying out his orders without question. Now she returned as his enemy. Perimeter is clear. Dante's voice crackled through the earpiece. Security is minimal. He's not expecting trouble. He's not expecting us, Lucio corrected. There's a difference. The entry was silent. Lucio's team moved like shadows, neutralizing guards with efficient precision. Clara followed Lucio through familiar hallways, her heart pounding, her weapon steady in her hands. They found Enzo in his study. He sat behind a massive desk, a glass of wine in his hand, watching the door as if he'd been expecting visitors. Ah! His smile was cold. The prodigal daughter returns. And with her new master, no less. Enzo. Lucio's voice was ice. We need to talk. Do we? Enzo set down his wine with exaggerated care. I rather thought we'd moved past conversation. directly to the violence portion of the evening. His gaze shifted to Clara. I expected better from you, Piccola. I raised you, trained you, gave you everything you are. You made me a weapon, Clara said steadily. You never asked if I wanted to be one. Weapons don't get choices. Enzo's smile sharpened. They get instructions. Not anymore. Lucio stepped forward. Your empire is finished, Moretti. Your assets are seized. Your men have been turned or captured. You have nothing left to bargain with. Don't I? Enzo's hand moved beneath his desk. Clara saw it a fraction of a second before Lucio did. Gun. She was moving before conscious thought, throwing herself between Enzo's weapon and Lucio's body. The shot rang out, deafening in the enclosed space, and fire erupted across her shoulder. Clara fell. The world narrowed to pain, red spreading across her sleeve. Lucio's face above her, twisted with something she'd never seen before. Raw, primal terror. Clara, Clara, look at me. Stay with me. She tried to respond, but the words wouldn't come. Her vision was dimming, edges going soft. Another shot. Then Lucio's voice, commanding, get medical. Now. Now. Hands lifting her. Movement. Cold air. Stay with me. Lucio's voice was desperate. Broken. Don't you dare leave me. Not like this. Not when I've just. Darkness swallowed the rest. Clara woke to white. White walls. White sheets. White light filtering through gauze curtains. And Lucio, asleep in a chair beside her bed. He looked destroyed. Stubble darkened his jaw. Shadows hollowed his eyes. His shirt was wrinkled, stained with what she realized with a jolt was her blood. The tattoo on his forearm was visible beneath rolled sleeves. Honor, Famiglia, sang, and his hand gripped hers even in sleep. You look terrible. Her voice emerged as a croak. Lucio's eyes snapped open. Clara. Her name was a prayer on his lips. Thank God. Thank God. His hands found her face, tracing her features like he needed to confirm she was real. The doctor said you'd recover fully. The bullet missed everything vital. But the blood loss. There was so much blood. His voice broke. I thought I was going to lose you. Right there. In that house. After everything we'd survived. Clara's hand covered his. I'm here. You almost weren't. Lucio's expression hardened with remembered terror. You threw yourself in front of a bullet meant for me. Of course I did. The simplicity of her response seemed to shatter something in him. Of course, he repeated, as if it were obvious, as if your life were less valuable than mine. Not less valuable. Clara winced as she shifted. Just mine to risk. For someone I love. Lucio made a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh. You're impossible. I know. She managed a weak smile. But you love me anyway. Yes. He pressed his forehead to their joined hands. God help me, I do. Enzo? The name emerged reluctantly. Lucio's expression went cold. Dead. My bullet, not his missed shot. He won't threaten anyone ever again. Clara closed her eyes. She should feel something. Grief, perhaps, for the man who'd raised her. Relief that the threat was ended. Instead, she felt only exhaustion. It's over. The war is over. Lucio's thumb traced circles on her wrist. But what comes next? That's just beginning. His dark eyes met hers. If you still want it. Want what? This. Us. Lucio's voice was quiet but intense. A life that doesn't involve betrayal or bullets. Something real. Something lasting. Clara's heart clenched. I've never had anything lasting. Neither have I. His smile was vulnerable. Perhaps we can figure it out together. It wasn't a proposal. Not yet, but it was a promise. An offer. A door opening onto a future she'd never dared imagine. Clara squeezed his hand. Together, she agreed. Recovery took weeks. Clara spent them in Lucio's palazzo, not in the secure suite this time, but in his bedroom. His bed, surrounded by his presence constantly, as if he couldn't bear to let her out of his sight. "You're hovering," she told him one morning. "I'm protecting." Lucio didn't look up from his correspondence. "There's a difference." "Is there?" His dark eyes found hers over the papers. "When I hover, it's because I'm worried. When I protect, it's because I refuse to lose you again." The Moretti organization crumbled rapidly. Without Enzo's leadership, his network fractured. Lucio absorbed some assets, released others, dismantled the rest with surgical precision. By the time Clara was strong enough to leave her bed, the war was truly finished. "What happens to the people who worked for him?" she asked one evening. "The ones who weren't soldiers? The ones who were just caught in his orbit?" Lucio considered the question. "They're given choices, genuine ones, the kind you never had." His hand covered hers. "The kind I intend to keep giving you." Summer arrived. Clara stood in the palazzo's courtyard garden, watching roses bloom beneath morning sunlight, and felt something she barely recognized. "Peace. You're smiling." Lucio's voice came from behind her. His hands settled on her hips, pulling her back against his chest. "Is that unusual?" "It's becoming less unusual." His lips brushed her ear. "I consider that a victory." Clara turned in his arms. "I love you." She said it often now, still marveled that she could. That words she'd once weaponized had become simply true. "Marry me." The words emerged without preamble. Clara stared at him. "What?" "Marry me." Lucio's expression was entirely serious. "I've been planning to ask properly. Dinner, rings, romantic gestures. But standing here, watching you smile in my garden like you belong here." He cupped her face. "I don't want to wait anymore. I've waited my entire life for something real. And you're it. You're everything." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Lucio, say yes." His voice dropped. "Please, say yes and make me the most fortunate man in Italy." "Yes." The word came out choked, inadequate, but Lucio's expression transformed into something blazing with joy. He kissed her, deep and thorough and filled with promise. His hands tangled in her hair, her arms wrapped around his neck. They stood in the sunlit garden, surrounded by roses and the sound of fountains, and sealed a future neither had dared believe in. When they finally broke apart, Lucio's forehead rested against hers. "I should warn you," he murmured. "I intend to spend the rest of our lives making you happy. I should warn you." Clara smiled. "I intend to let you." The wedding was small, intimate, just Lucio's closest circle and the priest who'd baptized him as an infant. They married in the palazzo's ancient chapel, surrounded by candlelight and centuries of history. Clara wore white, not because she deserved it. She'd long ago accepted that innocence wasn't the point, but because Lucio had looked at her in the dress and said perfect with a voice that broke. They exchanged vows in Italian and English, languages that belonged to both of them now. When Lucio slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands trembled. "I take you as my wife." His voice was steady despite the trembling, strong despite the emotion cracking through. "Before God and family, in this life and whatever comes after, I promise to protect you, provide for you, stand beside you through every storm." His dark eyes held hers. "I promise to love you with every breath I take until my last. And then, if there is anything beyond, I'll find you there too." Clara's tears fell freely. "I take you as my husband." she managed. And I make the same promise. The reception lasted hours. Dancing and wine and laughter that Clara had never expected to hear in these ancient halls. The palazzo had come alive, not with the cold grandeur of wealth, but with the warmth of genuine celebration. You're crying again. Lucio appeared beside her on the terrace, pressing a handkerchief into her hands. Happy tears, Clara assured him. I didn't know those existed. Neither did I. He pulled her into his arms. Until you. The music drifted from the ballroom. Stars scattered across the Italian sky, and Clara finally understood what home meant. Months later, Clara stood before a mirror in the palazzo's master bedroom. Her hand rested on her stomach, still flat, barely changed. But the knowledge of what grew there transformed everything. You're going to be a mother. Lucio's voice came from the doorway. He'd been watching her, she realized. The way he always watched her now, with a devotion that had long since stopped feeling dangerous. Scared? He asked. Terrified. Clara turned to face him. But not alone. Never alone. He crossed to her, his hand covering hers on her stomach. Not ever again. The pregnancy progressed through autumn. Clara watched her body change with a mix of wonder and fear. She'd never imagined motherhood, had never dared. The life she'd lived before Lucio hadn't allowed for dreams that soft. But now, in the safety of his palazzo, surrounded by people who'd become family, she allowed herself to hope. If it's a girl, Lucio said one evening, I want to name her Sophia, after my mother. And if it's a boy? His smile was gentle. Then you choose. Winter arrived. Clara was enormous now, the baby active and demanding. Her body stretched to accommodate new life. Lucio was insufferable. He hovered constantly, insisted she rest. Hired an army of doctors and midwives to monitor every moment of the pregnancy. I'm pregnant, not dying, Clara told him during one particularly smothering afternoon. You're carrying my child. His voice allowed no argument. You're carrying everything. Forgive me for wanting to protect that. Clara's irritation melted into something warmer. You're forgiven, she said, but only because I love you. The baby came on a February night. Snow fell outside the palazzo windows as Clara labored. Hours of pain and fear and Lucio's hand gripping hers through every moment. When the first cry pierced the air, time stopped. A daughter, perfect, beautiful, with her father's dark eyes and her mother's stubborn chin. Sophia, Clara whispered, holding the tiny body against her chest. Hello, Piccola. Lucio stood beside the bed, utterly undone. She's perfect, he managed. You're perfect. This is. Words failed him. He pressed his lips to Clara's forehead and wept. 1 year later, the garden was chaos. Sophia had just learned to walk, and she discovered that walking was far too slow. She lurched across the lawn on unsteady legs, shrieking with delight, while Clara chased after her. She gets that stubbornness from you? Lucio observed from his chair. She gets the fearlessness from you. Clara scooped up the giggling child. Don't pretend otherwise. Lucio rose and crossed to them. His family, his heart, everything he'd never believed he'd have. Happy? Clara asked. She asked it often now. Still seemed amazed when his answer never changed. Beyond words. Lucio took Sophia from her arms, bouncing the child gently. Beyond anything I ever imagined possible. Clara leaned against his shoulder, watching their daughter laugh. Me too. The palazzo rose behind them, ancient walls that had witnessed generations of Verano history. But for the first time, those walls contained more than duty and legacy. They contained love. Real, imperfect, hard-won, and absolutely devastatingly worth every battle fought to claim it. That night, after Sofia was sleeping and the palazzo had fallen quiet, Lucio found Clara in his study. She was looking at the Caravaggio, the same painting that had brought them together at that gala a lifetime ago. "Redemption through suffering," she murmured as he approached. "Salvation through shadow." Lucio wrapped his arms around her from behind. "You understood it before you understood me. I think I was learning to understand myself." Clara turned in his arms. What it meant to survive darkness, and what it might mean to find light. Lucio traced the scar on her shoulder, the bullet wound that had nearly stolen her from him. "I was sent to destroy you," Clara said softly. "Do you ever think about that? About what might have happened if I'd succeeded?" "No." His answer was immediate. "Because you didn't. Because you chose differently. Because somehow, despite everything working against us, we found each other." He tilted her face up. "You were sent to destroy me, Clara, but you saved me instead. Saved us both." Clara kissed him, soft at first, then deeper. A kiss that contained everything. The pain of their beginning, the struggle of their middle, the joy of their present. When they broke apart, Lucio pressed his forehead to hers. "I love you," he said, "more than power, more than legacy, more than anything I once believed mattered. I love you too." Clara smiled through tears. "More than survival, more than safety, more than I ever thought I was capable of feeling." His hand found hers, their fingers intertwining. Outside, stars scattered across the Italian sky. Inside, a family slept, imperfect and scarred but whole. And in the study, beneath the painting that had started everything, Lucio Verano held his wife and understood that some weapons, when forged with enough care, become something else entirely. Not tools of destruction, but instruments of grace. Clara had been sent to destroy him. Instead, she had become the only thing worth saving. And he had kissed her like it was true, because it was. The end. Thank you for listening to the story of power, betrayal, and redemption. If this journey touched your heart, please like romance and impossible love. Until next time.